Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to tackle something that I get a lot of you guys asking for that watch my videos that have to do with J-Series buggy stuff. And this is for anybody that's got a J-Series in any car. I've looked and I've heard from a lot of fans out there. There's not a lot of comprehensive videos out there on how to flip a J-manifold and how to do it properly. So today I'm going to take you guys along with me and show you how to properly flip a J-manifold the other way. That way you get the throttle body facing that way. It frees up some room, frees up the room for your water lines. You guys that have clicked on this video to see what it's all about, you already know why you need to do it. So I'm going to show you guys how to do it. And this is on any J-Series motor, whether it's a J35A4, A2, the JDM motor, US motor, they are all the same. So I'm going to jump into here. I'm going to get this thing stripped down since it's getting ready to go in a car. And I'm going to show you guys how to flip this manifold and how to do it right. So stick around. Hey, what's up guys? I wanted to jump in here really quick and show you guys our brand new product. This is the Dunatic High Octane Glamis in a Jar Scented Candle. This thing smells like all that rip-roaring horsepower that we have out in Glamis that we smell every time we're out there. So if you guys can't make it out to the dunes and you want to get that real experience to see what it's like, the feel, the sound, I've got the smell for you right here. This is Glamis in a Jar at thedunatic.com. Get yours today. All right guys, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you the tools that you're going to need to do this. So your typical Honda stuff, 10, 12, 14, 17. I've got an adapter for my impact gun. I know these aren't impact sockets and I'm going to get flamed in the comments, but it is what it is. 12 millimeter open end ratcheting wrench, 12 millimeter 1/4 inch drive on the socket, and just your basic pair of pliers to squeeze some of the hose clamps and what have you. This motor, because it's not in a car, it's going to be relatively easy for me to get to everything. First thing I'm going to want to do is grab these pliers. We're going to undo the water lines that go to the throttle body. So they're just a squeeze clamp. I'm going to pull down. I'm going to squeeze that water line and move it back and forth a little bit, and then squeeze right below it, and it should come right off of there, just like that. The other one that's right here has already been cut, so we're good to go there. The wrecking yard took it off for us, so good deal there. Next, it looks like we're going to undo these vacuum lines. They just pull off. They're out of the way. The ECR port, we're going to disconnect that, get it out of the way. And then we're going to take our 12 millimeter and undo all the bolts right here in the top of the manifold. So these are all the 12 millimeter bolts that hold the manifold on. Now in your typical J-Series, like a J35A4, there's going to be a cover plate on top of here with a bunch of 10 millimeter bolts. You're going to remove that first, and then it's going to expose these bolts. This is a JDM motor with a short manifold, so the bolts are exposed. All of these manifolds are interchangeable. So if you've got a J35A1 and you'd like to get a little bit more torque out of it, you can put a J35A4 intake manifold on it with the riser that'll give you a bit more torque. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and jump into here and undo all these bolts. We're going to take these and just sit them out of the way, and we're going to go ahead and lift off the intake manifold. Okay, now if you guys look down here, this is typical J-Series. Looks just like every other J-Series on the planet. These intake manifolds, again, are shaped just a little bit different, but we're gonna go ahead and pull the gasket off. And there you have it. We got our EGR port. If you guys are swapping to the taller manifold from the J35A4, you're gonna need to remove these studs and use the longer bolts. So now we're gonna grab our 8 millimeter. We're gonna remove the fuel rails so we can get access to the bolts to flip these manifolds over. Because when you're flipping this deal, you're not just flipping the plenum over, you're flipping the manifolds from side to side as well. And then I'm gonna show you guys how to block the EGR part as well. All right, I got the fuel injector harnesses out of the way. If this was in your car, you know, your normal fuel injection harnesses would be here. Just unplug them, pull it out of the way. We're gonna go ahead and grab our 8 millimeter 1/4 inch drive and go ahead and get these 8 millimeter bolts out. All right, we've got our 4 8mm bolts. These have an 8mm head, but they are the regular, like Honda style 10mm bolt thread pitch. I believe that's 8mm 1.5 or something like that. But anyhow, I'm gonna move those out of the way, and then we can go ahead and take our fuel rails, and we're just gonna lift them right out of here. As you guys can see, the injectors came with it, which is fine. We're just going to take that whole fuel rail assembly and lean it over to the side. Okay, next, we're going to take our 10mm and we're going to remove these plastic pieces which hold the harness, and these are the, it's like a vacuum distribution. It evenly distributes vacuum from the left to right manifolds. I'm going to show you guys also how to remove that piece and then join these back together. Or for you big turbo guys, we go ahead and weld them shut, and I'm going to show you that as well. Okay, so now we're going to remove the power steering pump brackets. For those of you guys that are retaining the factory power steering setup, you cannot flip this manifold. The power steering pump will be in the way. Most of the cars we run into in the desert are usually running electric power steering or a power steering relocate that puts the power steering pump down here. But like I said, we're going to go ahead and remove these brackets. It's 4 12mm bolts, 2 on each side. I'm just going to grab my gun, my extension. I know my Snap-on guy's cringing right now that I'm using my regular sockets as impacts, but there's one of the brackets. We're going to remove it, and we're just going to flip this around. Same thing on this side. That'll take the bracket and tensioner for the OEM power steering out of the way. So next, this is where our 1/4 inch drive, 12mm short socket comes in handy. Bring you guys on in here and show you. We're going to go ahead and remove all these bolts out of the intake manifold, and that's where this is going to come in handy. It's going to pop right in there, and we're going to kick these bolts loose and get these manifolds taken off. Okay, as you guys can see, bring you on in here. Get this B out of here. All the nuts and bolts are off of these intake manifolds. So what you're going to want to do is shake them back and forth a little bit, just like this. And as you shake them, they will loosen up and come off of here. I promise, they will. There's the first one. There's the second one. Now, next step, guys, we're going to go ahead and take these manifolds and just flip them. Flip them. So we know that one's going to go on this side. This one's going to go on this side. So as you guys saw from the time lapse, I backed out some of those nuts and I just let them fall down in there. So now's the time you can just grab your magnet. Go ahead and pull those out of there if you've dropped any. I dropped a couple. And we're all good to go now. This is also a good time, guys, to clean your intake ports. Get you some brake clean, spray your intake ports in there, and get them cleaned up. So if you guys look here, buggy motors, we do not use the EGR. We always use a block off. Most of you guys that have these in your buggies will not have this EGR valve here. There'll be a block off plate. That port goes right here into the old manifold, which is right here. And what we're going to do is flip this around. So if you look here, you can see where that port is on this side, but it just goes in there and comes out right here. There's nowhere for the EGR valve to go. So that's going to create a monstrous vacuum leak in the intake system. In order to plug that, you can do it a couple of ways. You can weld this shut, clean it, stuff some JB Weld in there, make a paper gasket for it. The way I do it is on the plenum. I go to the oblong hole, which is right here on the plenum, which is actually full of exhaust EGR right now. I clean this out, I weld this shut, and then smooth it out. So that way you never have that vacuum leak. So that port goes through to the intake manifold, which comes out here, which goes out here into an open port on this side of the head. So again, how you block off the EGR port is this right here. Clean this off, block it off however you can. JB weld, regular weld. I always clean it out. We TIG weld them shut and then grind them flat. So that's how we do it. You can do it however you want. Liquid steel, JB weld, like I said. So that's how you block off the EGR port so you will not have any vacuum leaks. Next, intake manifold gaskets. They cannot stay there. As you can see, they are EGR specific. And since we're rolling the EGR port to the other side, we're gonna take both these gaskets off. We're gonna flip them over, put them right here, and then this one has to roll over to this side just like that. Now the gaskets are flipped. Now the manifolds are flipped. These gaskets are made out of steel, so they are reusable. You can just throw them right back on. At this point, now that the manifolds, now that the gaskets are flipped, we can go ahead and stick our intake manifolds back on. We've already flipped those, so we're gonna go ahead and stick the first one on here. Take the next one. It's gonna go down like so. All right, it's gonna be it's kind of a circus trick to get these to line up, but it can be done. So you just put that one on lightly, stick this one on lightly, and with a little bit of finagling, just like that, you'll get them back on. Now you guys can see that the EGR port is on this side. And again, we're gonna block this off in the plane. So guys, in order to get these fuel rails to line up right, I'm gonna have to flip them as well. As you can see, the ports on the end have a stud and a hole for this crossover. So this crossover is gonna stay at this end, right? We're just gonna sit it aside. We're gonna go ahead and pull these off, flip the fuel rails around so they bolt up to the intake manifolds. So on this motor, I have flipped the fuel rails. If you come over to this side, you can see that your 8mm bolts will go right back inside. They'll bolt right down like they should. Same thing on the opposite side. With this particular fuel system, the way this is, looks like your crossover tube will go back in. You're gonna have to pick and choose what you do with your fuel line. If you roll the fuel rails over, you're gonna have to extend this feed line over to this fuel rail. If you choose not to, on your standard J35A4 or A2, when you put the fuel rails back down, one bolt hole will line up, one will not, and you'll have to mark and drill the second bolt hole. So that's how that works. Once your fuel rails are in, you've got your fuel lines worked out, you're pretty much ready to put the plenum back on. Everything's flipped. You've taken your plenum, you have welded this hole shut or blocked it off however you wanted to. You can go ahead and take your upper plenum and stick it back on. Now you can see manifolds flipped, everything's orientated. You're gonna have to extend your vacuum line. PCV, actually, it fits on this motor. So you're gonna reroute that around and extend a couple of vacuum lines, and the mechanical portion of it is done, guys. That's it. You're gonna put your 12mm bolts back in there, torque them down to spec, and you have a flipped manifold. Now let's move into the wiring. All right, real quick, I got a little bit ahead of myself, guys. I had set the plenum back down on here, and I forgot to show you guys how to block off these ports. So if you've got a boost car, what we do is go ahead and we just weld them shut. What this is, it's a vacuum equalizer. So it equalizes vacuum between the left and right head. You can also just take the pieces out, go ahead and bolt them back in, and then just put a barb fitting so you can join them back together. So you'll put this one back in as well. And then if you put a barb fitting right there and join them together, they'll work that way. But on turbo cars, we always plug them or weld them shut because you don't want that thing blowing off of there under boost. You'll create a big vacuum leak, suck in a bunch of sand in the dunes, and then you've got to rip this whole thing apart to try to do it. So you might as well just plug them now. It doesn't affect how the motor runs. So now we're gonna move on to the wiring. Basically, when you flip this thing over, your map sensor, your TPS, your intake air temp sensor, and your idle air control valve are all gonna be too short. They're not gonna reach. So for the intake air temp sensor, it's 2 wires. You're gonna need to cut it back here, or actually it was on this side. You're gonna cut it here and you're gonna extend it. And guys, do yourselves a favor, do this one plug at a time. Extend the wires, solder them. I always use solder. You can do whatever you want, but I prefer solder. You're gonna run it around, plug it back in. Idle air control valve down here at the bottom is 3 wires. I try to use the factory color wires as well. You're gonna cut it back here. I plug it in right here, solder the 3 wires, and they'll run back there. Extend the idle air control valve. Map sensor, right here on top. You can see this one's broken. This is a JDM motor, it came from an importer. There's 3 wires in the map sensor as well. You're going to cut and extend those as well. That'll be back here. And then you can look here, TPS sensor, also broken, but there's 3 wires for the TPS sensor. You're gonna extend those 3 back to there as well. So there's 3, 6, 9, 11. 11 total wires you're gonna be extending back here. All right, guys, so we're gonna run out here to this Jseries car, and I'm gonna show you guys the actual wires to extend and how to do it. This is a turbo car that's here, and intake's been flipped, and the wires have been extended. So if you can see here, they ran them through some loom and they extended them all together all the way around. So here's your intake air temp sensor. That's been extended. Here's your map sensor, the 3 wires that have been extended. TPS sensor, those 3 have been extended. And the idle air control valve down here, those have all been extended as well. So guys, that's it. It's just that simple to flip the manifold, plug off the vacuum port. I know there's not a lot of videos out there. You guys got any questions, drop a comment down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you give us a like and a subscribe, and we will see you guys at Glamis Fab.